Good morning, students. We are studying about chapter number 20, locomotion and movement. So far, we have discussed about the first half of the topic of muscle contraction, a brief recap, and then we will see the remaining half of muscle contraction topic. Okay, do you remember this sequence? I hope you remember. Already we had revised for several times. Sequence up to this point in the process of muscle contraction. We said that the stimulus for muscle contraction released by CNS, released by central nervous system, arrives at the muscle via motor neuron. Motor neuron axon terminates into the muscle sarcolemma. That juncture is called as neuromuscular junction, also known as motor end plate. In the motor end plate, you can see that the axon end, which is called as synaptic knob, and the sarcolemma are maintaining some physical gap between themselves called as synapse. When the impulse reaches to the synaptic knob, its vesicles release a neurotransmitter. What's the name of that neurotransmitter? Acetylcholine, Zanil. Yes, good, Rudra. So that is an acetylcholine. It would be liberated and it will reach to the receptors which are placed on the sarcolemma within this motor end plate position. When they receive it, dash is generated. When the neurotransmitter is received on the receptors on sarcolemma, what is exactly Jugal and Rudra? Very nice reply. Action potential is generated. This would further be carried by the sarcolemma via its inward projections, which are called as Gala and Jugal. Wow. T tubules. And T tubules conduct this action potential up to which organelles within the cell, within the muscle fiber, Jugal and Gala again. Wow. SR, sarcoplasmic reticulum. And in response, which ions shall be released from SR? Jugal again. Calcium ion. And I said that they go and bind to which unit of which protein on which filament. Jugal correct. T and C subunit. Next is Saurabh and Fatima. Aksa. Which protein having T and C subunit? Yeah, Gallo, correct. TNC subunit of troponin on thin filaments. That is the one which will receive it. And that happens, it will unmask which positions. The binding of calcium to troponin will make the conformational change in it. And the Zanil and Jugal have given correct answer. Myosin binding sites get opened up on the thin filament. And that will let begin the muscle contraction to start, because Now the cross arms are eligible to bind with the thin filaments and establish dash. When cross arm binds with the thin filaments, myosin binding sites, they are no longer cross arms. Yes, Jugal, you are absolutely right. It's called cross bridge. Archie and others, those who are there, correct. Afia and others. Akshak also, Tia also. Very nice reply. So I guess up to that point you all are clear with. Now I take you further in details of that particular topic. So for example, this is which filament, if you can let me know. What should I name this one? Be quick, you have given so nice answers, such nice answers. Now you should be very fast. Thick filament, Rudra is the one. Correct. What is the name of this projection at this point of time? It is not yet attached to the thin filament. What you call it as cross arm. Galav, you are right. Cross arm. Jugal, you are right. And it's this site where a molecule is going to bind. What is this site known as? What is this site known as? Come on, fast. ये साइट कौन सी है? रुद्र, look at it. यहाँ पे क्या बाइंड होने जा रहा है? ATP बाइंडिंग साइट है. It's ATP binding site. And what is this filament known as? Thin filament, absolutely right. And can you make out that this thin filament is having its myosin binding sites open on it? So now the things are, the set, that the platform is ready for the beginning of the process, and the process is a muscle contraction. Let's have a look. Step number 1. ATP molecule binds to the cross arm. Step number 2. ATP molecule hydrolyzed at that ATP binding site into ADP and phosphate to release energy. Step number 3, using that energy, cross arm attaches with the myosin binding site present on thin filament. Myosin binding site present on thin filament. Now it is known as cross bridge. Now it is known as cross bridge. Who will repeat these 3 statements? Jugal, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, first ATP molecule binds with the cross arm. Second, ATP molecules hydrolyzes ADP and inorganic phosphate and generates energy. Third, using this energy, cross arm attaches with the myosin binding sites which are present on thin filament.
And now it is known as
Cross bridge.
excellent. Too good. So, students, have you understood these 3 steps? All of you? चलो गर्ल्स में से कोई एक रिपीट करेगा. Who will try? Afia, Aksa, Fatima.
Sir, can I?
Fatima is the one who has raised hand. Yes, Fatima, go ahead.
Yes, sir. First, ATP molecule binds with cross arm. Then ATP hydrolyze ADP plus phosphate.
And
Uses this energy cross arm cross-arm myosin binding site present on thin filament. Now this is known as cross bridge.
Exactly. So all of you listen carefully. An ATP molecule binds to the cross arm at its ATP binding site. 2. There it will hydrolyze into ADP phosphate and releases energy. 3. Using this energy, cross arm attaches with the thin filament at its myosin binding sites to establish cross bridges. Step 4. Can you see the shape of cross arm or cross bridge was like this? But now it is pulling itself backward. By this, excuse me. Now this makes this curving or bending of cross bridge makes the thin filament to slide inward. To slide inward. Inward is there is a line in the center of A band which is called as M line. So this makes the thin filament to slide inward towards M line. So basically myosin filament remain as it is, but its cross bridges interlock with the thin filament and then they bend backward and pulling this thin filament inward towards the M line. This is how the thin filaments are sliding inward. Now, then after immediately, I repeat the fourth step, the cross bridge will bend and slide the thin filament inward towards M line. I repeat, the cross bridges will now bend and will slide the thin filament inward towards M line. Step 5, ADP and phosphate get released from the cross bridge. From the cross bridge, head region of the cross bridge, ADP and phosphate are released. Step number 6. Another ATP binds to cross bridge and the cross bridge is broken up, separated from the thin filament. मैं repeat कर लेता हूं. Step number 4, cross bridge bands, curves and slides the thin filament inward towards the M line. M line की ओर ये filaments को inwardly pull करते हैं, slide करते हैं. Second, next, now ADP and phosphate get released from cross bridge. And 6, a new ATP molecule binds to the cross bridge and this leads to release or breaking of the cross bridge. Cross arm separates from the thin filament. Chaliye, Shreya, repeat 4, 5, 6.
Yes, sir.
हाँ बोलिए.
The fourth step is, yes, sir. The fourth step is the cross bridge will curve inwards towards the M line of A band. Then the ADP
No. Somebody else should try. Who else is there ready? Jugal, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Bending of cross bridge makes the thin filament to slide inwards towards the M line.
Exactly.
Fifth.
All of you remember the word sliding because this theory is called as sliding filament theory. So we have to use this word, sliding of thin filament inward towards M line. Shreya, cross bridge is not, we can't say that cross bridge is inward bending towards M line. क्रॉस ब्रिज वहीं पे रह के अपने आप को बैंड कर कर्व करता है इनवर्ड, बट स्लाइडिंग ऑफ थिन फिलामेंट टेक्स प्लेस टुवर्ड्स एम लाइन. सो वो एम लाइन थिन फिलामेंट के लिए यूज करना है. जुगल फिफ्थ.
Yes, sir. ADP and phosphate are released from the head region of cross arm. Another sixth, another ATP binds to cross bridge, and now the cross bridge is broken down.
Yeah, okay, fine. Breaking of the cross bridge and separation of cross arm from the thin filament. Excellent. Somebody else should try. Girls
Sir,
में
now
से भी.
can I try?
हाँ, बोलिए फिर से.
Yes, sir.
Fourth.
Yes, sir. The cross bridge curve inward, sliding the thin filaments towards the M line of the A band.
Too good.
Then the ADP and the phosphate separate from the cross bridge. Then
Super.
another molecule of the ATP binds with the cross bridge, and in this way, the cross bridge separates from the thin filament.
Excellent, excellent. Good one. So have you all understood the 6 steps? चलो सब साथ में बोलेंगे. Yeah, 6 different students, 6 different steps. Okay. Zanil, step number 1.
The actin filament binds to the cross arm of the.
Gala, first step.
Yes, sir. The ATP molecules bind with cross arm of at the ATP binding site.
Okay. Jugal, step 2.
Yes, sir. ATP molecules hydrolyzes ADP and phosphate and releases energy.
Fatima, step 3.
Yes, sir. Using this energy, cross arm myosin binding site present on thin filament.
Cross arm attaches to myosin binding sites on thin filament to form cross bridge. Okay. Zanil, 4. Shreya, 4.
Yes, sir. Then the cross bridge curve or bend inward, sliding the thin filament towards the M line of the A band.
बहुत ही बढ़िया. 5th, Zanil, 5th. Rudra, 5th.
Yes, sir. The molecules of ADP and phosphate are released from the cross arm.
बेटा क्रॉस ब्रिज अब तक ये अटैच्ड है.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
ओके. जब तक अटैच्ड है क्रॉस ब्रिज वर्ड यूज करने का, जैसे रिलीज हो जाए क्रॉस आर्म वर्ड यूज करेंगे. ओके, करेक्ट. एंड हु विल टॉक अबाउट आफिया, आप बोलेंगे 6th one.
Yes, sir. Sir, the new ATP binds to cross bridge, and this leads to breaking of cross bridge.
And now it is known as after breaking
cross bridge.
Cross arm.
Cross arm, yes, sir.
Yeah, very good reply. Excellent, all of you. Very satisfying reply from your side. Very impressive. You guys are replying very well. I go through it quickly. और आप देखना हम यहीं पे वापस आ जाएंगे सेपरेट क्रॉस आर्म पे. एटीपी इसके ऊपर बाइंड कर रहा है ना, वहीं पे हम आ जाएंगे वापस के भाई इसके ऊपर एटीपी है. सो नाउ एटीपी बाइंड्स टू द क्रॉस आर्म. स्टेप 1. ATP hydrolysis on the ATP binding site to form ADP and phosphate and also releases energy. Using this energy, cross arm attaches with Fatima, specifically for you. Using this energy, the cross arm attaches to myosin binding site present on a thin filament to establish what is called as cross bridges. Step 4. Cross bridges curve and make the thin filament slide inward towards the M line. 5th, release of ADP and phosphate from the cross bridge. 6th, cross bridge receives one more ATP. Afia, cross bridge receives one more ATP and now it is detaching from the thin filaments. So cross bridge is broken. Now it is again cross arm. Now all of you understand that the same cycle will be repeated again. तो ये थोड़ा और अंदर जाएगा, थोड़ा और अंदर जाएगा, थोड़ा और अंदर जाएगा. आपको समझ में आ रहा है? ये थिन फिलामेंट थोड़ा 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 करके अंदर की ओर जाएगा. So this is how, if I show you in another pic, check out this one. This was in the beginning. Can you see these are cross arm or cross bridges? देख के पता चलता है इन थिक फिलामेंट्स के ऊपर क्रॉस आर्म है या क्रॉस ब्रिजेस है. Cross arms है, isn't it? They are not yet attached to the thin filament. So let me point out the structures and get the name of it. This is what जो रेड कलर का है, थिक फिलामेंट. एग्जैक्टली. चलो, दिस इज व्हाट इज दिस? थिन फिलामेंट. एग्जैक्टली. दिस इज व्हाट Z line. Excellent. ये वाला लाइन कौन सा लाइन है? ये लाइन कौन सा है? Z line, also known as Krause's membrane. अच्छा, ये वाला लाइन कौन सा है? M line is a correct answer. चलो, इस Z लाइन से इस Z लाइन तक के डिस्टेंस को क्या कहेंगे? हाँ, which included one entire A band and half, two half I bands, one on each either side. And what do you call this area in this entire, the whole is A band, but this much exactly H zone, H band, Hansen zone, जिसमें सिर्फ thick filaments and no overlapping thick and thin together, only thick filaments. Now, as you see, the cross bridges are formed. Can you make out the cross bridge formation has taken place? And when these cross bridges will curve themselves, they will be pulling these thin filaments towards which side? They will pull these thin filaments towards which side? M line. Got to imagine that. You got to imagine that when these cross bridges will be formed and they will be pulling the thin filaments inward, तो जब ये inward pull करेंगे thin filaments को, they will be heading towards which line? M line. But for that 50 to 100 times pulling is required. आपने थोड़ा पुल किया, थोड़ा पुल किया, थोड़ा पुल किया, कितनी बार करना पड़ता है? सेम साइकिल, वो 6 स्टेप्स वाला साइकिल कितनी बार रिपीट करना पड़ता है? How many times that cycle to be, it is to be repeated? 50 to 100 times. And that will lead to the, a stage where the thin filaments are completely meeting with the M line. वो देखो, ये आधा contraction हुआ है, contraction just start हुआ है. This is totally relaxed condition. ये आधा contraction हुआ और ये पूरा contraction हो गया. दिख रहा है आपको? Fully contracted now. So यहाँ से start करेंगे तो यहाँ तक जाते जाते 50 to 100 times each cross bridge is broken, formed, broken, formed, pulled, broken, formed, pulled, broken. 50 to 100 times वो ऐसा करेगा, तब जाके ये पूरा sarcomere contract हो जाएगा. And when all sarcomeres contract, in a way, the whole muscle undergoes contraction. This is how the sliding of thin filaments over thick filaments result into contraction of sarcomere, and that will lead to the contraction of whole muscle. Have you all understood how the muscle contraction takes place? Now I have 4 questions, 3 to 4 questions. अगर आप इसका correct answer दे देते हो, so I will be I'll get the idea that you have understood this whole topic. Question number 1. In this whole process, what happened to sarcomere during this contraction or at the end of the contraction? Starting from relaxed state, partially contracted and fully contracted state. What happened to the sarcomere? Exactly, Saurabh Pal, you are right. Rudra, you are right. Size की जगह, yeah, Zenil has used better term, shortening. Size की जगह पे हम use करेंगे, its length is decreased. It has shortened up. Can you make out it was this much before contraction and it is this much after contraction? So may I say like this, that shortening in length, reducing the length of sarcomere, that is the one thing that happens during this muscle contraction. How many of you agree with me? Chalo. My next point. What about I band length? I band की length का क्या होता है? Remains as it is increasing or it is decreasing? आपको पता होना चाहिए पहले तो कि आई बैंड क्या होता है. गलत. अब सब गलत हो. अब देखो, ये जो आई बैंड वाला पोर्शन था, ये हाफ आई बैंड था, दूसरा इधर होगा, दूसरा आई बैंड इधर होगा ऐसे. तो वो अगर आप देखो, केयरफुली ऑब्जर्व करो, तो दैट मच तो रिड्यूस्ड ओवर देयर. So length of I band also decreases. What happens to the A band length? As it is, yes. क्यों? क्योंकि आप देखो, जितना A band लगता था उतना ही है. Could you see this thing? The myosin filaments are not moving, so the length of the A band shall remain same. It's the actin filaments which are moving, and that makes the length of the I band decrease. So I band length decreases, A band length remains same. H line का क्या हुआ? आपको पता होना चाहिए H line क्या होता है, by the way. Yeah, Gallo has used a very much appropriate term. disappeared, actually he used the word vanished, which is more sophisticated, but we shall be using the text content. Disappeared when it disappears gradually when muscle starts contracting, and at the full contracted muscle, so it fully disappears. That is the status of the H line over there. Okay, so H line disappears over there. Two Z lines come close to each other, so sarcomere shortens up. I band length decreases, A band length it remains same, and H line disappears. This is what happens at the time of muscle contraction. Now I have explained the full possible details of this muscle contraction. I hope you have understood the same. देखिए यहाँ पे दो मसल, दो सार्कोमियर का व्यू आपको मिलेगा. For example, this is one Z line, this is another Z line, this is another, this is one sarcomere, this is another sarcomere. Hope, are you able to make out this thing? Fine, these are your thin filaments. These are your thick filaments. This much is sarcomere. This is the H zone. All together up to here is A band. आपको मैं दिखाता हूँ एक और पॉइंट जो आपको अंडरस्टैंड करना चाहिए. ये जो पोर्शन है ना, वो आई बैंड है. देखो मसल कॉन्ट्रैक्शन हो गया तो आई बैंड रहा, ऑलमोस्ट डिक्रीज हो गया ना. हाँ या ना. So this is what I was talking about. Now I give you a chance to ask a question. No question. Fine. I repeat, and then we wind up with question answer and go to the next topic. Question number one, revision now, first of all. 50 to 100 times the cross bridges are formed and broken up, and they will be pulling the filaments, thin filaments, inwards towards M line to lead to complete muscle contraction. While this muscle is contracting, certain changes take place in the muscle. Point number one, which one's length decreases? I band. Which one undergoes contraction? Actually, the sarcomere. Which one's length remains same? A band. And which one completely disappears by the end of muscle contraction? H band, H line, H zone. Fabulous answers. With this, I conclude the topic and I go to the next one. Muscle relaxation. Not much mentioned about muscle relaxation. Hardly 2 lines are given, so I will just go through those 2 lines. At the time of muscle contraction, the calcium ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cistern. Sarcoplasmic reticulum की जो सिस्टर्ने होते हैं, उसमें कैल्शियम वापस ले लिया जाता है. And this will be leading to masking of actin filaments. And once this happens, the contraction stops, and reverse to that, the Z lines are pulled back by the system to the original position, and the muscle will go back to its original relaxed state. After reaching to this position, the muscle fully contracted. अगर relaxation करना है तो जो calcium है, it is to be pumped back into SR, cistern of sarcoplasmic reticulum. Once it is pumped back, those troponin TNCs without calcium, their conformational change will help in covering of myosin binding sites on thin filament, and that will reverse the entire action. ये जो contraction हुआ था उसका reverse किया जाएगा. ये जो Z line से उनको बाहर pull करके अपनी जगह पे वापस ला दिया जाएगा. So muscle will go back to its original relaxed state over there. Muscle relaxation. During muscle relaxation, calcium ions will be pumped back into what? Which part of SR? Gala, very good answer. SR cistern of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. There they are pumped back, the calcium ion. This will lead to dash. This will lead to dash. Masking of actin filaments. So the two Z lines which have come close to each other and have contracted the sarcomeres will go back to their position, and your thin filaments are pulled outward back, and the muscle shall remain back into the relaxed condition. Let's go to the another topic, that is muscle fatigue condition. Muscle fatigue condition. Repeated contraction of muscles. Repeated contraction of muscles leads to a condition that is known as muscle fatigue condition. Now I have you got to interact with me regarding this. I have some questions for you, if you can reply for that. Does it happen ever that just say you have the final exams and for a month or so you were busy in exam, and the day exams got over and the vacation day one itself, and suddenly you are going for cricket or badminton or some such physical games, outdoor games, suddenly very next day of the exams getting over, for a month you were doing no exercise and you were not playing, and suddenly you are going for this kind of exercise. फिर उस दिन इवनिंग में क्या होता है पता है आपके बॉडी में? हाँ, ट्रिमेंडस पेन. अगर बहुत रन किया है तो पैर आपके उठ नहीं पाएंगे. अगर हैंड्स की मूवमेंट्स बहुत ज्यादा हुआ है, इफ यू हैव मूव्ड योर हैंड टू मच, तो यू कांट लिफ्ट योर हैंड इवन वर्चुअली. जैसे सडनली बैडमिंटन खेलना स्टार्ट किया और 2 घंटे खेल लिया, बिलीव मी, आपका जो राइटी हो तो आपका राइट हैंड ऊपर रेज योर फिंगर बोलते हैं ना, ऐसा ऊपर नहीं कर पाओगे आप उस इवनिंग में. ऐसी हालत हो जाती है. Why this thing happened, do you know? Phenomenon is which one? Muscle fatigue. That phenomenon is called as which one? Muscle fatigue. Repeated contraction of muscles. आज इतने बहुत दिनों तक आपने मसल्स को इतना यूज नहीं किया है और सडनली आप उसको यूज करते हो, इतना सारा कॉन्ट्रैक्शन करते हो, तो that will lead to the muscles to undergo fatigue condition. ऐसा. I hope you are understanding what I am explaining. अच्छा, वो फटीग पूरी लाइफ तक रहता है? Does it remain for entire life? No. It takes 2 to 3 days and things get settled down, isn't it? Exactly. So I am going to explain two things over here. Number one, why over contraction or repeated contraction of muscle leads to the fatigue. And second, why the fatigue gets over within 2 to 3 days. चलो गालो, कौन सी दो चीजें मैं पढ़ाने वाला हूं आपको?
Why muscle contraction, over muscle contraction leads to muscle fatigue, and why it remains for 2 to 3 days.
Exactly. You guys understand? I am going to explain what leads to the muscle fatigue condition and why it lasts for just 2 to 3 days. First half, repeated contraction of muscles. Now, initially what happens is that when muscles start contracting, the oxygen is available adequately and it can carry out the breakdown of sugars. Mainly glycogen hota hai as a stored food in the muscle. Muscles store glycogen. वो स्टोर्ड मटेरियल है उनमें. वो ग्लाइकोजन के ब्रेकडाउन से क्या निकलेगा? ग्लूकोज. और उस ग्लूकोज का क्या होगा? एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन. पहले तो कौन सा रेस्पिरेशन होगा? एरोबिक रेस्पिरेशन. बट आफ्टर सम टाइम oxygen shortage will be created. So your system will start carrying out anaerobic respiration. It will switch over to the anaerobic one. Muscles में क्या stored था? Glycogen. That will be broken down into what? Glucose. That glucose initially will go for which respiration? Aerobic respiration. But after some time, when oxygen shortage created, it will switch over to which respiration? Anaerobic respiration. What is the product of anaerobic respiration of glucose in animal cells? Aerobic में तो CO2, H2O and 38 ATP मिल जाएगा. Anaerobic में क्या मिलेगा? चैप्टर नंबर 14 रेस्पिरेशन का याद हो तो आपको, ईस्ट में आपको मिलता था 2 अल्कोहल मॉलिक्यूल्स, 2 CO2 एंड एनर्जी 2 ATP. यहाँ पे मिलेगा 2 मॉलिक्यूल्स ऑफ लैक्टिक एसिड एंड 2 ATP. जैसे ही ये लैक्टिक एसिड फॉर्म होता है, मसल्स में ये अक्यूमुलेट हो जाता है and it will hamper the muscle contraction. So you are not able to use the same muscle again. You're not able to contract it then after. And there is a lot of pain over there. That condition is called as muscle fatigue. I repeat, and then you will repeat. Number one, initially, when muscle contraction starts, your glycogen, the stored material, gets broken down to glucose, and that glucose undergoes aerobic respiration. But after some time, when contraction continues due to the shortage of oxygen, muscles switch over to the anaerobic respiration, in which a lot of lactic acid is generated. This lactic acid gets accumulated in the muscles. This leads to what is called as fatigue condition. One boy, one girl, they will try. Who will start? Rudra.
Yes, sir. When muscles contract repeatedly, the glycogen in the muscles is broken down into glucose, which continues aerobic respiration. But when contraction continues, and due to lack of oxygen, the glucose is undergoes anaerobic respiration and produces lactic acid. This lactic acid is accumulated in the muscles, which hampers the muscle contraction and develops fatigue in the muscles.
Marvelous reply. Marvelous. Only one word for it. Almost I heard as if I was only going through the same. I'm not saying mine was marvelous, but your reply was marvelous. Okay. चलिए. So गर्ल्स में से कौन ट्राई करेगा? ये दो ही ट्राई करते रहते, कोई और भी तो ट्राई करो. अदर देन फातिमा एंड श्रेया, कोई और गर्ल्स नहीं ट्राई करेंगे? Others, other than these 5-6 students, 10 students who are very actively participating, should not others also try for the same? एक आप भी ट्राई कीजिए, आपका भी करेक्ट होता है. You can also do it. Come on. No. Shreya, go ahead.
Yes, sir. When the muscle undergoes contraction continuously, the glycogen gets converted into glucose. Then the glucose undergoes aerobic respiration, but when the absence of oxygen occurs, it undergoes the muscle undergoes anaerobic respiration, due to which the accumulation of lactic acid takes place in the muscle, which causes the body pain, and this hampers the muscle contraction process.
Okay, that is called fatigue condition. Very good reply. So that was about the fatigue condition. अब मैं दूसरा हाफ इसका एक्सप्लेन करता हूं. Why after few days or day or two that problem is sorted out or solved out over there? Because these lactic acid which is available in the muscle, gradually it goes into the blood. It comes out into the blood. So when it is emptied into the blood, muscle में से ये accumulated lactic acid blood में आ जाएगा, which will take day or two. So then the muscle will resume its normal functioning. So we say muscle fatigue is over. So it takes almost 2 to 3 days for complete removal of lactic acid from the fatigue muscle into the blood. What happens to this lactic acid which has come out into the blood? While this blood will pass through the liver will convert this lactic acid back into the glucose, for which it uses one cycle which is called as Cori cycle. Cori करके एक साइंटिस्ट थे, उन्होंने ये प्रोसेस को अंडरस्टैंड किया था कि मसल में से जो ग्लूकोज का लैक्टिक एसिड में कन्वर्जन हुआ है, यहाँ पे ग्लूकोज वाज कन्वर्टेड इनटू व्हिच वन? लैक्टिक एसिड. वो ब्लड में आता है, ब्लड में से लीवर में जाता है, और लीवर में वो वापस लैक्टिक एसिड में से ग्लूकोज बन जाता है, और वहां से वो वापस ब्लड में आएगा, और ब्लड में से वापस कोई भी सेल यूज कर सकता है, इंक्लूडिंग दी मसल सेल. तो इस साइकिल को कोरी साइकिल कहते हैं. Let me show you the Cori cycle to make you understand it further. Have a look. ये मसल पार्ट, तो मसल में आपके ग्लूकोज का कन्वर्जन किस में हुआ? लैक्टिक एसिड में. It came out into the blood. Via blood it reached into the liver. लिवर में लैक्टिक एसिड में से वापस क्या बन गया? ग्लूकोज. That glucose comes out into the blood. और अगर ब्लड या ब्लड में से कोई भी सेल इंक्लूडिंग द मसल सेल उसको पिकअप करता है, वापस उसका एनारोबिक रेस्पिरेशन में लैक्टिक एसिड में कन्वर्जन. अगेन द साइकिल proceeds in the same manner. This cycle is a Cori cycle, the one which explains how liver converts the lactic acid to synthesize glucose. अच्छा, इस प्रोसेस को ग्लूकोनियोजेनेसिस भी कहते हैं. This process is also identified as gluconeogenesis. CO2H2O को ज्वाइन करके ग्लूकोज फॉर्म करना बाय दी प्लांट सेल्स, उसको तो फोटोसिंथेसिस कहते हैं. ग्लाइकोजन के फॉर्मेशन को ग्लाइकोजेनेसिस कहते हैं. ग्लाइकोजन के ब्रेकडाउन को ग्लाइकोजिनोलाइसिस कहते हैं. ग्लूकोज के ब्रेकडाउन को ग्लाइकोलाइसिस कहते हैं. Glucose formation from other organic compounds is known as gluconeogenesis. For example, organic acids converted into glucose is a classic example of gluconeogenesis. It takes place in liver through what is called as Cori cycle. Cori cycle. Chaliye, what happens to the accumulated lactic acid in the muscles over the next 2 days? It would be emptied in the blood. Oh my goodness, too good. Via blood, it will reach to which organ? Goes to liver. Very nice. In liver, this lactic acid will be converted to dash. Afia, well done. Glucose. Henna, Mutahir, Misha. This conversion of lactic acid into the glucose is known as which process? Process wise, what is the name? Whenever such organic acid is converted to glucose, what you call this kind of process as? Rudra. Missile जैसा attack है. Instant. Gluconeogenesis. Fab. Himanshi, Fatima. And it occurs during which cycle in liver? Gallo, yes, Cori cycle. Afia, Cori cycle. Coric nahi, beta. Aneri, yep, you're right. Cori cycle. चलिए, तो ये पार्ट क्लियर आपके माइंड में? हाँ या ना? अच्छा, before I go to the next, a small break, 5 minutes, and we will rejoin to continue the topic. Till then, goodbye. Break for 5 minutes. So our next topic is about two types of voluntary muscles. Voluntary muscles with red fibers and voluntary muscles with white fibers. Before I go in detail of the same, let me give you the idea about pigment. There are two pigments which you can see to be found in the human body, in animal bodies. One is myoglobin, another one is hemoglobin. Similarity. Similarity between the two, if I say both are red in color, the red color pigments, and both can capture oxygen. Both can capture oxygen. Now, differences. Myoglobin is found in muscles, whereas hemoglobin is found in RBC. Myoglobin is storing the oxygen in muscles. Hemoglobin transports the oxygen in blood. Myoglobin is made up of single unit, hem and globin. Hemoglobin is made up, single hem and single globin. Hemoglobin is made up of 4 such units, each one with one hem group and one polypeptide, either alpha or beta. So, have you all understood about these two pigments, myoglobin and hemoglobin? चलो, कौन इसके बारे में differences दिखाएगा? The two red color pigments which can capture oxygen. Who will talk about them? Let me see how many are raising the hand. Afia, आप बोलिए.
Yes, sir.
Differences.
So myoglobin. So shall I speak?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Myoglobin is found in muscles and hemoglobin is found in RBC.
correct.
Myoglobin store oxygen in muscles and hemoglobin transport oxygen in blood.
Two.
Myoglobin is made up of single unit and hemoglobin is made up of 4 such units.
Excellent. Fantastic. That's a good reply. So that was about the myoglobin, the basic idea you must have about it, because that will help us to understand two types of voluntary muscles, red and white. See, generally, the muscles, the voluntary muscles, they can be classified into two categories mainly: red and white. Red voluntary muscles and white one. Red with the red fibers, white with white fibers. What happens is that both of them have a myoglobin in them, but this one has a very high amount of myoglobin. The other one has a very low amount of myoglobin. So naturally, with lesser myoglobin, this one will appear white. With more myoglobin, the red muscles will appear more red in color. Naturally, if you have more myoglobin, you store more oxygen, isn't it? On the other side, with less myoglobin, you store less oxygen. Common sense matter. Is this clear? जितना ज्यादा मायोग्लोबिन होगा उतना ज्यादा स्टोर करेंगे ऑक्सीजन को. तीसरा, they have a more number of mitochondria. अब ये माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया क्यों ज्यादा? जितना ज्यादा ऑक्सीजन उतना ज्यादा एरोबिक रेस्पिरेशन, तो उतना ज्यादा माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया. The other one will have a less mitochondria in number. इसमें सार्कोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम थोड़ा कम होता है. इसमें सार्कोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम थोड़ा ज्यादा एक्सटेंसिव होता है. ऑलवेज रिमेंबर दैट वे. So these are some of the point of difference between this red and white muscles. Look, red muscles, white muscles, both are the type of voluntary muscles. Both are the types of voluntary muscles. White muscles are the ones in which dominantly more amount of myoglobin is present. Naturally, they can store more oxygen, and to use that oxygen, they have more number of mitochondria. The other one, the white muscles, with a low amount of myoglobin, they appear white in color, they store less oxygen, they have a less number of mitochondria. The only thing more is sarcoplasmic reticulum. Acha, out of these two, which anaerobic respiration, इन दोनों में से कौन सा वाला anaerobic respiration पे ज्यादा डिपेंडेंट रहेगा? Exactly. क्योंकि it is having less myoglobin, so it can store less oxygen. As soon as that oxygen is used up, it has which muscles are aerobic muscles meant for prolonged aerobic respiration. Prolonged aerobic respiration, long time के लिए ज्यादा चलेगा. Yes, red muscles. You see, lot of myoglobin storing lot of oxygen. and lot of mitochondria, so can continue with the aerobic respiration for long duration. This is the aerobic muscle set. Now, if I ask you a question, number one, the muscles which will help in flying, birds के जो muscles होते हैं ना, जो उनको flight में help करते हैं, they would come under which category? Exactly. The flight muscles of birds are example of aerobic respiratory muscle or red muscles, because flying will require continuous movement, continuous contraction, relaxation for a long time. So they have to be red muscles, otherwise थोड़ा ही flying करने में fatigue condition आ जाएगी. ऐसा. Muscles in our back region, हमारी जो back होती है ना, जो हमारा पोस्चर मेंटेन करती है, वो जो बैकबोन के साथ लगे हुए मसल्स हैं. Whenever we are standing or sitting or sleeping, it will maintain posture. Those muscles at our back maintaining the posture, they should be of which category? Red or white? Red. बहुत ही long time तक उनको work करना पड़ता है. हम सोते हैं तो hours तक खड़े रहते हैं, लॉन्गर ड्यूरेशन तक बैठे, हम कोई भी पोस्चर मेंटेन करें, उनको तो यूज करना ही पड़ता है हमें. आप तो या तो बैठे हो, या तो खड़े हो, या तो सो गए हो ना, बट आपका बैक का कोई एक पोस्चर तो मेंटेन रहता है. तो वो मेंटेन करने के लिए कंटिन्यूअसली दिस मसल्स गॉट टू वर्क. दे आर सपोज्ड टू बी द रेड मसल्स. मसल्स व्हिच कैन रोल अप योर आई बॉल. आपकी आईज जो होती है ना, इधर उधर मूवमेंट हो सकती है आई बॉल की. ओके, आईलिड्स की नहीं, आई बॉल की. इनसाइड द स्कल कैविटीज जो होती है, ऑर्बिट्स, आईज की जो कैविटीज होती है आईज के लिए स्कल में, वो कैविटीज को ऑर्बिट्स कहते हैं. उसमें आपका आई बॉल का मूवमेंट होता है. दोज मसल्स आर व्हाइट मसल्स. दोज मसल्स आर विच वन? व्हाइट मसल्स. ऐसा. हमारे जो लिम्ब के मसल्स होते हैं, हाइंड लिम्ब के जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, नॉर्मली दे आर मिक्स्ड वन. उसमें कुछ रेड फाइबर्स भी होते हैं और कुछ व्हाइट फाइबर्स भी होते हैं. दोनों का कॉम्बी हमें मिल जाता है. माय लास्ट क्वेश्चन टू कंफर्म वेदर यू हैव अंडरस्टूड और नॉट. एक फिजियोथेरापिस्ट ट्रेनिंग दे रहा है एक एथलीट को. एथलीट का मीनिंग पता है ना आपको? एथलीट का मीनिंग पता है ना आपको? हाँ. One athlete is being trained by a physiotherapist. The athlete is preparing for sprint. Sprint. Sprint पता है? Short burst, 100-200, उससे ज्यादा नहीं. थोड़े ही टाइम के लिए मसल को फास्ट वर्क करना है. तो physiotherapist will advise which type of exercise that can build up either red muscles or white muscles. Zenil is correct. White muscles. I reframe the question and ask some other aspect of it. A physiotherapist is training the athlete who is preparing for marathon run. Marathon run. He must be guiding the athlete for developing which muscles? Yes, this time it is supposed to be red muscles. देखिए, marathon means muscles will have to contract and relax for prolonged duration. So for such activity, the red muscles are better. अच्छा, red muscles work slowly, but they work for long time. उनमें SR less है, calcium storage थोड़ा कम होता है, तो they work but longer duration. They work for longer duration. अच्छा, ये जो white muscles है, they have a lot of SR, so they work very fast. But for which time? Short duration. अब आप बोलो, marathon will require which type of fast muscle contraction or slow, short duration or long duration? What type of muscle contraction is required? Slow contraction for longer duration. Slow and long, slow and short, fast and long, fast and short. Which combi? Slow and long duration. दूसरा मैं एग्जांपल देता हूं, sprint or weight lifting will require slow and long, slow and short, fast and short, fast and long. Which one? Fast and short duration. कम टाइम में बहुत ही फास्ट मसल को यूज करके वाइंड अप करना है मैटर. सो उस फास्ट एंड शॉर्ट मस्कुलर कंट्रैक्शन के लिए वाइट मसल्स चाहिए. सो उसका जो ट्रेनर होता है एथलेट का, उसको पर्टिकुलर फूड एडवाइस करता है और पर्टिकुलर एक्सरसाइज एडवाइस करता है. कि जैसे कोई मैराथन के लिए प्रिपेयर करता है तो उसके बॉडी में मसल्स, more and more red muscles should be developed in his or her legs so that he can or she can run for longer duration with a slow contraction. तो proper exercise उसकी different होती है और उसका food stuff different होता है, उससे red muscles ज्यादा develop होते हैं. अच्छा, a person is training his or herself for weight lifting or sprint, तो उसके जो मसल्स होते हैं पर्टिकुलरली बाइसेप, ट्राइसेप्स, या फिर रनर के लिए थाई मसल्स एंड लेग मसल्स, तो ट्रेनर इज सजेस्टिंग सच अ फूड एंड सच एक्सरसाइज which can develop more and more white muscles in your system, in your legs, particularly in your arms. So that was a profile of red muscles and white muscles. What's the time? 10:58, or it's almost here. Few terms you should be knowing. I have completed the content of the first half of the chapter. Muscle physiology is done. The second half is about the skeleton, which we will see in the next lecture. That is Monday, Tuesday, we will wind up with that. Now, today I will be talking about certain aspects which are related with a NEET exam. Okay, so certain terms which you should be knowing regarding the NEET exam. These terms are very important. So I'm giving you the detail of those terms. इसमें ज्यादा डिटेल में आपको अंडरस्टैंड नहीं करना है. NEET exam, competitive exam, not GUJCAT, but NEET exam in which such questions are asked. So if somebody is preparing for NEET exam, should pay attention on this matter. Muscle twitch condition, when your muscles undergo involuntary contraction and relaxation in a localized region at a small scale. That is called as a muscle twitch. Madam, stop the recording. With this, we conclude today's lecture.